Hello, BookTube. My name's Tony. This is Locks to Reads on a cold, grey, darkish November afternoon in London town. Um, Today I'm going to talk a bit about Ivor Gurney, specifically though about this book, Michael Hurd's The Ordeal of Ivor Gurney, and to make a small plea for it to be reprinted. It was published in 1978. This is a 1983 reprint. It is a biography of poet, composer, soldier, Gloucestershire lad, Ivor Gurney. It is a hard read about a man that went through a lot of mental health issues, a little bit before the war and a lot after the war. Gurney was born in Gloucester in 1890, there you go, and died in December 1937. He, as I said, was born in Gloucester and lived most of his life in and around Gloucester and the Cotswolds. Although he started composing music at about the age of 14 and moved to and got a what's the word, a scholarship to the Royal College of Music in 1911, where he studied. In 1913, he had his first mental breakdown of sorts, but seemed to recover. The war started. He joined the Gloucestershire Regiment in 1915, and was part of various campaigns during that time. He started writing poetry while he was at war. He was writing music as well. He published his first collection of poetry, Seven and Somme, in 1917. The seven in that, by the way, is the River Severn. And then he had another breakdown in 1918 that seems to have might not have been really war related. The main thing seems to be that Gurney, we probably call him bipolar in the present age, and he'd been suffering to some degree from that before as he grew up. But at the end of the war, he had this breakdown. He seemed to recover, tried to go back to the Royal College of Music, but couldn't and stopped. And then in 1922, he had another major breakdown. That's when he was put in an asylum by his brother, by people. But his brother, who seems to have been, I think, I don't want to be too harsh on his brother. I think he's a British man, an English man of that period of time. But he seemed to have the attitude that you just needed to get over whatever your mental problems were, and hard work or something would get you over it. And he seemed to be lacking in sympathy with his brother. He was a creative, bipolar, difficult man. Now I don't blame Gurney's brother for that. I think it's a consequence of the time period and a general lack of compassion and understanding. Also, you've just come out of a major war, so it probably looks like a small scale issue at this point. He never left mental hospitals, and he died in one in 1937. And he'd gradually, someone described him as being sane in his insanity in the 1930s. I'll have to dig out where that quote comes from. I think it might be Marion Scott, who, I should stop here because another one of the books I've got on my list is a combined biography of Marion Scott and Ivor Gurney. I don't know as much about Marion Scott, but she was a key figure in trying to support Gurney while he was still alive and keeping his work alive after he died. So I'll talk more about Marion Scott at some point because the focus here is on Ivor Gurney. Now, there's been 3 biographies of Ivor Gurney that I can find. This was the first one. There's the Ivor Gurney and Marion Scott one by Jean Blevins. Had to look that up. And apparently, and what I'd missed, there's a 2021 biography as well, which I need to buy a journalist whose name escapes me. All these will be in the notes underneath in the show notes. But I want to talk about this book particularly. This is, as I said, is a biography of Ivor Gurney. I think it should be. I want it to be republished, perhaps with some of his poetry in it as a sort of combined effort. As I said, this was reprinted in 1983. I don't think Michael Hurd, who was a composer as well as a writer himself, died in 2006. So I don't know what the odds of it being republished are. I'm starting a campaign with my huge YouTube following to try and get somebody to republish it, because I think it's a book that's worth reading, because it's not a standard biography. It paints a picture of Gurney's life without being a hagiography. It tries to give a true account of the value of his work, both as a composer and as a poet. I mean, Hurd's conclusion fundamentally is that that his poetry is good but not great, but some of his music is great. He composed a lot of songs, like setting poetry to music. I will put some. I found some on a music service, which I will put as links in the show notes below. They are quite interesting to listen to. They're that sort of early 20th century, late 19th century song style that seems to have gone massively out of fashion in since then. The sort of classical song rather than the musical song or the pop song. Although I suppose at the time they would have been considered popular music. It's a hard book to read. I genuinely cried a couple of times reading this. It starts with a letter he wrote to the Metropolitan Police when he was in one of the asylums. I'm going to read just one little bit from it, well, two little bits from it actually. It starts with some words from Michael Hurd himself about that. It says, "There's no date, no day, no month, no year, only an address where time didn't matter. Then page after yellowing page of cheap thin paper, with line upon line of penciled words, upright and clear." And then it starts, "To the London Metropolitan Police Force." And the bit that I want to read is the end bit, the last couple of lines. "For 6 months and a half now, my confinement and pain has endured. My music, my verse, my war service should have saved me from so much pain. So many times I had gone to honour and really injured none, asking for death, release or imprisonment, an end to pain. I. B. Gurney. Many letters have not been forwarded through accident." And that's how the book starts. And then it talks about his upbringing in Gloucester and all through its friends. And it's actually very good as well at being both a biography, a biography of the person and a literary biography. So you learn about his writing, about his composing, and about how his war. It's a beautiful book. I really do absolutely recommend it, and I do wish that somebody would republish it in this modern day and age, even if it's just a Kindle only thing. In this day and age, somebody somewhere should publish it, republish it. So I think that's all. This is going to be a short one for me so far. I want to read one of his poems before I go. It's probably his most famous poem. It's called "To His Love." "He's gone, and all our plans are useless indeed. We'll walk no more on Cotswold, where the sheep feed quietly and take no heed. His body that was so quick is not as you knew it on Severn River, under the blue, driving our small boat through. You would not know him now, but still he died, nobly. So cover him over with violets of pride, purple from the seven side. Cover him soon, and with thick set masses of memorial flowers. Hide that red wet thing that I must somehow forget. So that's a Gurney poem. You can read his stuff. You'll find some Gurney poems. He's become slightly more popular over time, as his sort of the best of his work has been appreciated more. You'll find him in lots of poetry anthologies, at least one. Usually, that poem that I've just read. There is this book which I've mentioned before, which is three poets of the First World War: Ivor Gurney, Isaac Rosenberg, and Wilfred Owen. I actually think, as an anthology, this is probably worth getting your hands on to read three very different types of poet. As I've said, I've talked about Wilfred Owen already. I will be talking about Isaac Rosenberg at some point. But I realise that this has been a very poetry-heavy first week of Remembrance Reads videos and of my YouTube videos. Obviously, you can see by the subject matter that I'm really trying to build a massive following of hundreds of millions of people by talking about World War One poets. But I really do recommend this anthology as much as any other. And as I said, I'll say it again, somebody republish this, please. Now, I realise what I'll do tomorrow, because it's been 6 days of solid blogs on poetry and poets. Tomorrow I'm going to do the BookTube newbie tag video as a break for both me and for you. And hopefully that will be of interest. At some point I'm going to learn how to put like graphics and interesting things around it. Yeah, that's basically it. So I hope you have a good day, regardless of what's going on in the world. And I will see you all here on I say all 18 of you here tomorrow on BookTube. Have a good night. Bye bye.